So our verse of the month for February, and I may roll this one into March as well. So teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom. These are Moses' words. I talked about this, began a new series last Sunday called, which I call Number Our Days. Pretty creative, right? But anyway, it's kind of, what does this mean, to number our days? Okay, first of all, it means, it's the same word number here is when Israel numbered the people in the census or whatever. It's simply to count. Count our days. And so what's inherent in that? It's recognizing I don't have an infinite number of days. It's recognizing this life does not go on forever. There is an end to it. And to be aware of that. To kind of count. You know, I don't know about if you ever get like some really special expendable Christmas gift or a certain candy someone gives you or something. It's like, you look, okay, I got 8 of them, you know, I want to make them last, or you count, you know, and it's kind of in a really silly example, but I only have so many days on this earth. Teach me to number my days so I may get a heart of wisdom. And so we started looking at it and, you know, talking about how this life here on earth is but, the Bible just says, a brief vapor. It is but a moment. And the thing is, we sometimes don't grasp that because we don't see eternity as the backdrop to measure this life against. You know, we put so much emphasis on this physical life, and we see, you know, the births, and we're about to celebrate one in our fellowship, a new birth, and you know, and some of us are on the other side, starting to definitely feel our age and see the silver coming out and everything. And, you know, we're at different places, but this is our frame of reference, is this brief window. But against eternity, and, you know, we use the example, if you're 9 years old, 3 years is a third of your life. If you're 75, 3 years is 1/25 of your life. 3 years doesn't seem nearly as big, because you have a different backdrop or perspective that you're measuring it against. And if we could see eternity, like, you know, Carolyn just shared a glimpse of God in Isaiah, His holiness, if we could see eternity, something we would see this life, especially, you know, in perspective, especially when we realize that what we do in this life carries into and affects our entire eternity. And suddenly we go, which one do I want to be investing in? The one that's gone like that, or the one that I will live forever? You know, which is the one I want to be, and what does the Bible tell me I should be doing? And I started this study because, and I want to recap last Sunday some, but not too much. If you weren't here, I really encourage you to listen to it. It's on the YouTube thing, and not because I did it or something like that. It just, one, it's laying the foundation for what we're looking at over the next weeks. But it was very powerful as I put it together to read all these different passages, one after another, where Jesus tells us, look to my return, look to the end, realize the time could end at any moment. You are not promised tomorrow. And that's why I started this study is, you know, in the period of a week, I realized the women's group was studying that, you know, live like you're dying. The men's group was studying James, you know, you're not promised tomorrow. I was getting stuff in my inbox saying, what if you had a week to live, you know, in blog writing, it's not a warning. And you know, these things, and it was like, okay, Lord, there's something about this theme that you want us looking at, of numbering our days and realizing we need to choose to live wisely. At least if we want to live biblically. And we talked about that it's not enough. We went after last Sunday, passage after passage by Jesus, warning us He could come back at any time, or we could die at any time, you know, physically. That we're not promised tomorrow. But rarely was that enough of what He said. It wasn't the end. It was usually followed by a therefore. It's not just to be aware, okay, this could be my last day. But I'm supposed to do something about it. Therefore, live in light of that reality. And that's, you know, again, that's what we touched on last time, started to, and we'll continue looking at. But we talked how easy it is in the case, like the parable Jesus told of the virgins whose lamps weren't ready with oil. They began to get drowsy because the bridegroom was delayed. And I think that can be us. Jesus, well, he hasn't come back. And every generation says, this is the generation. And I'm only whatever years old. And we start to get a little drowsy, spiritually slumber, and lose the watchfulness of realizing this could be my last day. What do I want to do with this life? And we sort of talked about that. And again, if it's not that he returns, it could be that we, or maybe someone we think we have tomorrow to make things right with. And maybe it's not us that's snatched, but them. And suddenly we wake up and realize, I don't have tomorrow to say I love you. I'm sorry. Let's make peace. Let's whatever. I wanted to teach you this. I wanted to impart this into your life. We may not have that day. And so we were talking about that. We read Jesus' words about the rich man is like, I've got so much stuff. I need to build more barns. I'm going to build these barns and, I'm going to be all secure. My future's secured. I'm going to whatever. And Jesus said, you fool. Tonight, your life will be accounted of you, will be called. And so we kind of looked at that and just started to say, what does this look like? And what is the treasure that I want to store up? Where do I want it? The picture I kind of felt like God had given me is get in my car and I'm driving out of this life and I'm crossing over the line into the next. Do I want more in my rear view mirror or more in my windshield? Do I want to be leaving more behind me than I have ahead of me? Where do I want to be investing? And this is the thing that, with what we leave behind, it's everything. I think it was Rockefeller, don't quote me on that, but he died and his attorney came out or whatever, and they said, well, how much did he leave? Obviously wanting to know how much money. The attorney said, everything. It was kind of, there's a power in that simplicity, everything. Everything you've accumulated, every bit of penny you own, every piece of property you own. I was thinking the other day, I was looking at our property, I love our land, I'd love to be able to take my tractor out and move earth if I want to, because it's my land, and I can put a fence across there, and I know we live in Monterey County and, everything else, but anyway, just all that aside, for the most part, I can just get out there and it's my land. And also I thought, 100 years from now, I don't even know if, first of all, whoever's going to own it probably isn't even alive yet. I have no idea that they'll even be a family member or a generation. And they could do something so offensive to me on that land and I'll have nothing to say about it. Not that I'll probably care in heaven, but the reality is it's mine. We're so mine. It's ours for a moment. There is nothing we own. Nothing we have, acquired. Nothing that will be ours on the other side of the grave. And a lot of that stuff won't even be ours in 5 years. It'll be in a landfill. It'll be broken. It'll be outdated. The latest phone today is going to be obsolete 4 years from now. It's just the technology. Whatever it is, that brand new car now, 5 years from now, it's just the cycle of this life. Even my body will not be mine in a blink of an eye. But who I am, my spirit, made alive unto God, or for those who hasn't been, their life, it will carry eternally, either with God in heaven, living in the fruit and reward of my life now, or separated from God for all of eternity, honoring the choice that people made in this life. God, He died so we could have free will. He's not going to take that from us at the last breath. If our free will has been, I don't need you, I don't want anything to do with you, I got this, He'll say, fine. I wooed you 100 times, 1,000 times. I will honor your choice. And people say, oh, how would a loving God send someone to there? He's not. He died on a cross so we could be with Him forever. We're the ones making that choice. And it's something that we've got to kind of think about. And what is my great worth? What is it that I want to invest in? This or the next? You know, what is it I want the measure of my life to be? Because we have a chance. I mean, if he tarries and if we're here for a while, we have a chance this day to make some decisions. What do we want the measure of our life to be? What do I want to be known by? What do I want the mark of my life to be? What do I want to carry with me? And to make decisions that then reflect that, you know, what we say. And our choices will reflect what we really want. You know, I've shared with you guys so many times the example years back when people still use checkbooks and not credit cards all the time, but you know, someone had told me, don't tell me what your priorities are. Show me your checkbook for the last month, and I'll tell you what your priorities are. Because you're going to invest in what's important to you. How we use our time, our finances, everything, that will reveal what it is we truly want. And so we talked about this, and we closed last week saying, it's not just to number our days, but it's so that we may get a heart of wisdom, that we may be wise. And the thing is this, to not know reality is ignorance. To not realize my days could be over today. I'm not promised tomorrow, either by virtue of his return or my physical death, whatever. But there is eternity. It's not that that's the end. That's just stepping through a door into another room or location. To not know that is ignorance. To know that and not live in light of that is foolishness. To know that and to live in light of that is wisdom. Which do I want to be? Because now you know it. So the first one's gone. You no longer complete ignorance. Sorry if I rained on your parade. But you now have this choice. You now know reality, and you probably all did anyway, but ignorance or foolishness to not live in light of that truth. Wisdom, teach me to number my days so that I may get a heart of wisdom. Vince was sharing with me that in the King James, it actually works better. Do you have that up there, Mona, if you look at Psalm 90:12 in King James? So teach us to number our days that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Okay, that's that verse in the King James. If he teaches me to number my days, to realize my days have a number, that this time is short, that there's a line that will be crossed, and everything from here will be left this side except what I've invested in that's eternal. If I start to learn this reality and take it to heart, I start to gain and apply my heart unto wisdom. Wait a minute, I don't want to be a fool. I want to live in light of these eternal supreme truths that God has gone out so much out of his way to share with us in the Bible. And again, that was one of the things that was so powerful last Sunday, was just parable after parable by Jesus. The master who departs, leaves his servants with things, and to see what they do with it, and then comes back. The virgins, the bridegroom that comes with the oil, these, one after another thing that Jesus said in different ways to get us to realize he may not be here right now, but he could be here in 2 minutes. Or whatever it could be. So we've been talking about that, and we're just going to kind of continue to move forward on that. To live in light of these days, to number our days so we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. It doesn't, again, just say number our days so we know this is true, so that we may. Again, there's another of your therefores and your continues. Here's a truth. Now here's what you need to do in light of that truth. We talked about it last week, some silly examples, but there's, you're in Altadena, someone's banging on your door, the winds are going by at 100 miles an hour. There's a fire a half block behind your house and it's heading your way. It's going to be here in 3 minutes. Wisdom grabs your keys and hops in the car and gets out of there. Foolishness says, okay, snooze, button. Neighbor calls, hey, I was just up, I looked out my window, 3 guys just broke through your front door, they're in your entryway, you have an upstairs bedroom, you know he's not joking, Wisdom says, okay, if you call 911, I already have it, but here's what I'm going to do, if you carry or whatever you do. Foolishness says, oh, thank you. Oh. Teach us our number today so that we may apply a heart of wisdom. God wants us to live differently because of what he's teaching us. And that's always, the heart. That's the heart of why I'm standing here. The Bible says God gave us pastors, teachers, all this to equip us for the work of ministry. So that we walk out of here a little different, having been here. Not just done church, not check the box for Sunday morning, but something we can take and start to wrestle with and apply. Holy Spirit, where am I investing in that which doesn't last? Show me my life. Hold up the mirror of my heart. What is it? However many days I have left, I want to make them count. For you young people, we got a lot of you here right now because of the box sled build. It's awesome to see you. You're making these plans. Am I going to go to college? Am I not? Am I, whatever. What do I want to be when I grow up? I cannot encourage you enough to take to heart what I'm sharing with you right now. You feel like you've got forever. I'm telling you, like that, you will be looking back and going, wow, it went so fast. And what do you want to do? What do you want to be known by? Where are you going to find your wisdom? What are you going to invest in? How do you define success for your life? The world's definitions? Wealthy, own your own home, own your own cars, whatever. God's definitions. Walking in step with him. Investing in eternity. It could mean you end up on a mission field. It could mean you end up never really wealthy. It could mean whatever. But if you walked with God and you've invested your life in the things that God says are important, you will have lived in the purpose you were created for. And you will one day cross that line and look back and go, my life had meaning, value. And that's something to just kind of keep in mind. The thing with this, religion is known for so many rules, ought tos and not tos, and everything else. It's one of the big gripes people throw at religion. Why would I want to? Whatever. It'd be easy to take this, and if you can go back to just the one above the image, please. It'd be easy to take this verse in whatever translation as another command, right? One more thing I've got to do. One more rule laid on my life. One more area I'm following short. It's not. It's not. Just put that out of your mind right now. It's just a statement of fact. Teach me to number my days so I may gain a heart of wisdom. The wise person will live aware of the fact they're not promised tomorrow, and what we do here affects eternity. Living in light of that, you live with wisdom. Not, you ignore it. It's just a statement. Moses said, I want to be wise. Teach me to number my days that I may apply or gain that heart of wisdom. God's not laying something else on you. Jesus said, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Here's your commandments. Love the Lord your God, all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. Now, to truly love your neighbor, to love God, you will automatically be living in light of these realities. But it's not one more ought to, one more area of religious performance I have to achieve. It's just, your Father wants you to be a wise child. Every parent, hopefully, wants their children to walk in wisdom. To take what they have to seed into their life. And I heard an expression one day that just really spoke to me and said that my ceiling might be their floor. And my ceiling might be my children's floor. That they would take the height of what I have learned and everything given to them and start at that point and just continue to climb. God's just telling us truth here. The heart that is wise will live in alignment with this reality. It will number its days. And so I think if we can take that sort of adjustment in our thinking, we will realize this is wisdom. It's foolishness to live not in light of reality. We call that delusional, right? To not live in light of what you know or what is true. Delusional, maybe you don't realize it, but that's not the right word. But To know something is true and not live in light of it is foolishness. The cross is foolishness to the world. Romans 1 says, men know that God exists. He said he is so evident simply in the things that have been made, his divine nature and power, that man is without excuse. Even if no one shared the gospel with you, when you stand before God, God's going to say you should have known. I am so evident in simply the things that have been made. At least that's my reading of it. But it said men suppress the truth because, and Jesus said it in John 3, because they love darkness rather than light. They love to live as their own God and their own king on the own throne of their life more than they want God's life leading theirs. So we suppress that truth. That's foolishness. The Bible says the cross is foolishness to the world, but really it's the fools that reject the cross. And so this is something, and here's the thing that, and again, young people, please hear me here, because you're at that stage, and I'm not trying to tell you not to go to college or whatever, okay, please don't, you pray what God has for you, counsel with your kids. But our culture tends to mistake intelligence and smart for wisdom. And there is a huge difference. We have made gods, lowercase g, in this culture of people who have a bunch of college degrees. And we will actually trust what they say more than we will trust what God has recorded in this book. We go, well, they've got all these degrees, they're all this and all. No, wisdom is to walk in light of reality. And I have known a lot of people with a lot of degrees and a lot of smart, intelligent people that unfortunately don't have a lot of wisdom. And I've known a lot of people who've never even graduated high school or college who have a wisdom I long to have, that I seek to learn from. And I remember one time Marianne and I, we were in Montana, and we're in this little cafe, and this guy walks in. Some of you have heard this, but he was instantly the type of guy you go, I hope he doesn't sit next to me. He was wearing like leather. He had this necklace with all these animal teeth on it, and he could have used some of them. He was missing so many teeth. He was, and I don't mean that, I know there's dental issues. I'm just trying to paint the picture. His hair was just, and he was on these kind of, well, sure enough, he sat right near us, and we get talking to him. And he's just like this mountain man. He travels around the northern United States working on ranches, doing ranch jobs, and he told us he had a dog, and he was staying in the city park, and he was, he said he was sharing some of his frustrations. He said, I pull into towns and the police go, move along, we don't want your kind here. And he said, what's my kind? He said, I don't hurt kids. I don't do drugs. I don't, and something stirred in our heart, and I think I said this, but he had told us he had hound dogs and stuff, and we get about 20 miles out of town, and we just were like, we gotta go back. And so we went to the store, we bought a big 50-pound bag of dog food, and we found him in the park. And there he was in this old truck, and from a distance it looked like this jalopy junk thing with this huge trailer behind it. But when you walked up close, everything on it had a place. The knots were all neat. There were animal skins and everything, but they were all tied neatly. The tools were all, and he had his 3 hound dogs, and he had his mule, and he just traveled ranch to ranch. And we sat, I don't know how long we sat with him. He took out his harmonica and he started playing You Are My Sunshine, and he couldn't sing very well at all, but it was beautiful. And his hounds start singing with him, and somewhere we have a cassette. We recorded it. I've got to find it someday. But he started just talking. He listened to Paul Harvey every day, and the wisdom that came from that man. He found out, I think at that time, Marianne and I were engaged, and he looked at me. He said, you be careful. I want to say son, but I don't know if he actually said that, but it's kind of what should have said it. He said, a man, when he's dating a woman, he will hold her in his hand like a feather. He will take such care of her. And so many times after they're married, And he just turned his hand like that and said not a word. I still can see that entire moment in my head. Now this was the man that you write off, right? Because he looks unkept and he looks whatever. He had more wisdom than probably half the people that graduate from American college. They may have smarts, and they may have degrees, and they may have a lot of knowledge, hear me? But it doesn't mean they have wisdom. And sometimes we can have so much knowledge and be so in love with our institutes of knowledge or our discovery channels and history channels and everything that we actually run roughshod over wisdom. We walk away from wisdom. I'm spending some time on this because this is what this is about. You may have someone who has no college degrees, talks funny, but if they understand their days are numbered and they live them with purpose and for the King, they are more wise than someone who arrogantly moves through this world with a bunch of degrees and fancy cars and paid off houses and properties, who just lives like they've got tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and makes their plans and leaves God out of it and does not invest in one day. They cross that line and everything's in the rearview mirror and there's nothing through the windshield. They have done nothing that carries through to the other side. Who's the wise one? The other one may have intelligence and degrees and knowledge. They may be able to tell you about the circuit diodes of a cell phone and everything else and design a ship to get you to Mars. But if they don't live in light of the truths that God has taught in His Word, they are fools. And they're the ones usually most entrenched in their foolishness and the hardest to get out of it. Wisdom is different. And that's what you see enshrined in the Bible. If you read through Proverbs, wisdom is that which is sought. You know, there's a song our family likes to listen to, Michael Mark Murphy, Cowboy Logic. You know, girls have to help me how this goes exactly, but you know, it goes into a dialogue portion and some guy goes, the old cowboy, 3 men are riding in a pickup truck, and the old cowboy turns to the young one and says, can you tell which one's the old cowboy simply by where he sits? And the young boy's like, well, I don't reckon that can be done. He's like, son, you still got a lot to learn. And he's like, the real cowboy is the one in the middle. He ain't there just by faith. First, you don't have to drive, and then you don't have to mess with the gate. There goes cowboy logic, But there was this wisdom, and you just feel the wisdom that comes out of these little gems. And that's just kind of what I wanted to be able to say. We old folks, right? We may not know how to send the latest texts and squeeze our phone and get the maximum out of it and do all the stuff that's hyperlinked and all these other quick things and all this stuff. But we do have, hopefully, wisdom. We've now lived and dealt with people for decades and decades. We know human nature. We've walked with God. We may not be able to say how to set up that, but we have a lot to offer about maybe the wisdom of what maybe should be in it or how it should be approached or, whatever these things. There's wisdom, there's youthfulness and energy and fire and you've got wisdom, and the two together make a beautiful team. And that's what I love. I love to see the young and the old side by side, working together. A friend of mine who I just treasure him and his wisdom, he was a younger man working a road crew up in the mountains, and this other crew just kept outpacing them every day. And he went to the guy running the other crew and he said, what are you doing different? Why are you so much faster? And the guy just pointed to his silver hair. He said, you see that? My friend goes, yeah. He goes, I got it and you don't. And that's all he said. So my friend took his binoculars and his lunch and he went and sat on the side of a hill for 2 or 3 days and just watched this other crew work. And and noted what did they do and how did they do it. And he took that back to his crew and applied it, and they began pacing the other crew. He recognized this man had wisdom. And I'm not saying all elderly or older people are wise.
Oh, yes, we are.
That exposes that we're not.
He's not talking about a wise guy.
But if we've been willing to learn from life and from God, there's something that's brought to the table by wisdom. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's been the hard way. It's been through life's pains and mistakes. I always say, ask questions, don't reinvent the wheel. I'd rather learn from someone else's mistakes than make the same ones myself. And this may seem like it has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but it has everything to do with what we're talking about. Solomon is considered one of the wisest men to have ever lived on earth, possibly the wisest, second only to Jesus. He was David's son. And he lived this long life, and he tried everything to find happiness and meaning and purpose. Ecclesiastes 2:10 said, "Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toil, and this was my reward for all my toil." How many of us in this room can say, I have the resources that whatever my heart desired, I have not denied myself? I can think of a lot of things I would love to do if I had the money or the time. I can't. Solomon could. This dude had like 700-800 wives or something, plus a bunch of concubines. He built things that still exist today as wonders of the world. He tried it all. Wine, women, you name it, accomplishments, all of that. And he boiled it down. He just said, vanity, vanity. He said it's like grasping at the wind. None of those things gave him what he was yearning for, that meaning and purpose and joy in life. I'm sure it was momentary pleasure and momentary felt good and this and that. But as he looked back on his life, and he's writing Ecclesiastes as an older guy, sharing his last words of wisdom, right? He's imparting this. And as he writes it, he said it was just like chasing the wind. Vanity, vanity. What is the word in vain? What does in vain mean? Futile. Your efforts are futile. In vain. And here's what he wrote at the very last two verses of the book. Ecclesiastes 12, 13, and 14. The end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether good or evil. He tried everything. Things we could only hope or dream about if we wanted to do. He said, this is the end of it all. This is what it all boils down to. God at the top. Walk with him. Now that same gentleman I told you about, the road crew guy who had the wisdom to recognize, the youthfulness of himself and the wisdom of the other foreman, now is the one with silver hair. And he reads the entire 12 chapters of Ecclesiastes every year on his birthday. He said it just reminds him of what really matters in life and what's worth investing in and where he wants to focus and what he wants to do and what will last and what will not. And so that is kind of where I want to pull us and close us this morning. And then we will begin, God willing, when I get back from Hume Lake, unpacking Psalm 90, where that verse of the month comes from. Because Solomon, the entire psalm, it's a very powerful psalm. And then starting to look at what does that mean. Because like I said last Sunday, there's got to be wisdom in applying the wisdom, right? Because if you truly thought that you're not going to have tomorrow, you probably aren't going to go to work today. There's certain things, but yet God says we're to work, we're to plan for the future, So but God doesn't give us impossible tasks. So clearly, walking in step with the Holy Spirit in us, walking in step with God, God will lead us in a path where we can live eternally focused for that which carries to the other side, and still live wisely, knowing we have bills to pay. You know, we may live 60, 70, 80, 90 years. What does it look like? God stands ready to walk. This is his joyful invitation to you and I to walk in the life he created us for. The Bible says he has prepared in advance good works that we might walk in them. It says, let our light shine before men, that our good works be seen. They would glorify our Father in heaven. It says, it is he who is at work in us, both to will and to do his good pleasure. God has prepared works for you and I to walk in. He created each of us unique. We are each amazing in his sight. He loves each of us personally. We each have something that we can be and do that no one else in this world, I believe, has been created to be and do. Lives you've been placed into, things you are. And God just doesn't give you that assignment, but he works in you as a believer to put that desire in you to do what he's prepared for you to do. He already did it ahead of you. He prepared it in advance. He already walked ahead of you. And he says he comes in you to put the desires in you and then to work in you to bring his desires to pass. That's a pretty incredible partnership. That you have been created by God. He has gone ahead of you preparing works for you to walk in. He comes within you as a believer to put the desires to do those works in you. And then he co-labors with you, Emmanuel, to walk through that which he's already prepared ahead of you. I can't think of a better partner in life than to do that. And that's the invitation. And you young people, as you're deciding, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? What am I going to be? Start with prayer. Start with him. I can't tell you how often it just breaks Marianne in my heart when kids are getting near to graduating out of youth group and, well, what do you want to be? Well, I want to do a business degree because, you know, they make money, or I want to this, one, that, whatever. Have you prayed about it? No. Really? You know, and just, do you understand God made you? He wrote the owner's manual. He knows you better than you know yourself. He has plans for you. Why do you want to risk going down a path that isn't his path and having to correct someday and missing the joy of walking with him through the entirety of your life? You know, what do you want it to look like? So I'm going to, for the next time when I come back, again, my heart being, and, you know, we don't know if we have tomorrow, but my desire, my plan at this point, unpack Psalm 90. I think you'd value reading that if you guys want. It's written by Moses. And then I want to explore the question, is it bad to live in light of rewards? Isn't that self-serving? That was my response as a Christian, a young Christian. Well, if I'm doing it because I get rewards, then that's still all about me, really. Isn't he just worthy of me worshiping him and doing it for him? Yes, he is. But the reality is, Jesus, and we will touch on this in coming weeks, sometime read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John and look at how many times Jesus taught about rewards and about storing up treasures in heaven and about our life here being rewarded in heaven and about the fruit of our life here carrying into heaven and what in this life doesn't carry into heaven. If Jesus taught that over and over and over, it can't be wrong. It's something he wants us to understand, to be aware of. Now this is the difference, though. See, I think as a young kid, I'm kind of like, or a young believer, I should say. I become a believer to my mid-20s. I'm kind of going, well, it's like trying to get that kid, you know, please, and beg you to do something. If you do this, you know, then I'll let you. And it, you know, and it's kind of like all about. I see it differently now. I see what is Jesus doing? He's just sharing wisdom with us. This type of life will bear fruit, and there will be rewards. This type of life won't. What are you going to do with that knowledge? You have knowledge, are you going to use wisdom? You now have knowledge, but will you apply wisdom? Remember the rich young ruler. You know, he said, what must I do to have eternal life? And Jesus says, all these commandments. He said, I've done them all. Okay, this one thing you lack, sell all you have, give to the poor. That doesn't mean Christians aren't supposed to have money. Whole other teaching. Sell all you have, give to the poor, and basically follow me, and great will be your reward in heaven. And it said the rich young ruler walked away sad because he had many possessions. It doesn't say Jesus chased him. He let him go. I imagine he grieved as he watched him walk away. Jesus didn't try and beg or bribe him. He just shared the truth. A certain path of life will have fruit that carries into eternity, have value and meaning and purpose, and a certain other paths will not. Now you have knowledge. Are you going to use wisdom? Teach us to number our days, that we may apply the heart of wisdom.